So funny, I filmed this lesson for parenting young children, and it turned into a long one. So this is now part one of two parts for parenting young children. So hope this blesses. Okay, let's get into it. We are talking about raising up young children, parenting young children, and I mean that really starts right at the time of conception, all the way. They're young. It's a relative term. We'll deal with older children, kind of more of the tweens and teens later on. But we're talking from like conception to, maybe up to about tweens. How do you really parent a young child, biblically speaking? Obviously, there's a million things and there's all kinds of stuff we can go through. But we're going to look at some of the main scriptures, some of the main tenets that you want to look at, the principles of being a parent, specifically to young kids. And when you start out, even with the idea of conception, you really want to be praying from the very moment that your kids are conceived. I mean, when you know that you're going to have a baby, you want to be praying. I mean, even before that, you could say that. But much like Job, when he was praying about his kids daily, looking at whether they sinned or not. I mean, obviously they were adult-like children, so he was praying for them, though, every day. We should be doing that from the very get-go, even when we're starting to plan to have kids, but especially when you know you're going to have kids. Be praying for them continually. That is one of the first things of parenting, is talking to God about parenting, because as a parent, how do you parent without your parent, your Heavenly Father, leading you? So be in communication with Him. But one of the principles that we go down that line with is the concept of really understanding what our kids are from the very beginning. Psalm 51 verse 5, this is the New Living. It says, "For I was born a sinner." Yes, from the moment my mother conceived me, born a sinner. I mean, we are sinful. We are depraved. We are in the marred image of Adam, and every single one of us. So when you are really looking at parenting a young child, one of the first things you've got to get in your head is this kid is a sinner. That is not something to judge them in. It's not something to look down on them. It's actually, in one sense, so that you are not surprised or frustrated when they act like a sinner, because that's what they are. That's what we all are. But how do you deal with a kid, especially like a baby and things like that, where these toddlers, they don't know what they're doing necessarily? Isaiah 7 verse 15 and 16 says, "By the time he knows enough to reject evil and choose good, he'll be eating curds and honey. For before the boy knows enough to reject evil and choose good, the land of the two kings you dread will be laid waste." So there is a time of knowing enough to reject the good, or to reject the evil and choose the good. What do you do in the meantime when your kids really don't know enough? Well, you start to teach them what they need to know. You start to set before them what is right, what is wrong, because we've already eaten of the fruit. We already have a knowledge of good and evil, in the sense of we do those things. We can kind of do good, and we definitely do evil. But where do you go with a young kid who really doesn't exactly know what they're doing? I mean, they're being selfish, they're being proud. You don't have to train a kid to lie. You don't have to train a kid to be a jerk. You don't have to train a kid to be selfish. We're born that way. But how do you even start to deal with a kid? Well, we can think through like, wow, you got to punish them, you got to do it. Punishment is one of those things that discipline is something that we really want to understand in context of helping them learn to grow, to know the Lord, to make choices. You start disciplining a kid when they don't even have the ability to make choices. That is something that is going to be very hard. So let's look at a few things. First, Hosea 4:14. We've hit this verse many times in this studies of parenting. Hosea 4:14 says, "I will not punish your daughters when they prostitute themselves, nor your daughters-in-law when they commit adultery. For the men themselves go off with prostitutes and offer sacrifices with shrine prostitutes." So people without understanding will come to ruin. You want to train even a little baby how to basically be godly. You're not going to really be training them. You need to train yourself. You need to set yourself up for following the Lord and honoring God. Your kids are a reflection of who you are. Every kid is an individual. There's some kids who are born uptight. There's some kids who are born lazy. There's some kids that are born angry. I mean, all of us have our own personal things, but your kid will reflect your character. Your baby, let's say, is born uptight. If you are uptight, you just add to that uptightness. They're going to be uptight all the time. If you're a know-it-all, they're going to grow up to be a know-it-all. They may even have those, you could say, genetic disposition towards it. But often the child, the baby even, starts to reflect you because even if they're born uptight, if you're chill, if you are at peace, if you are conducting yourself in a godly manner, it's not that they start to become godly, but they chill. They relax the more you're relaxed. Often you'll see very uptight kids. Well, it's usually reflecting uptight parents who aren't confident in what they're doing. I mean, new parents often are like this, but this is where we ourselves, even before you're having kids, need to start training ourselves. Hey, if I'm going to be a father, if I'm going to be a mother, I need to follow the Lord and I need to be at peace with Him so that when this time of testing with a kid comes, I can start to almost build that not only a culture, but an atmosphere for that baby to kind of live in. If you're real fussy about your kid, you're real concerned about every little noise they make, you're going to have an uptight baby who is constantly whining about every little thing. You let them soothe themselves because you're chill, they tend to chill out. I mean, those are small little training things that even with the babies, it actually starts to have an effect. It's hard for parents sometimes to allow a kid to cry because, my kid's crying. Well, the more experienced as a parent, you get to know your kid's cries between actual need, pain, and even they're just fussy. They're just, I don't want to be in bed right now, but it's bedtime. I don't want to be in bedtime. They're not saying that stuff, but you can kind of tell the difference. But you check, and even as a young parent, you're learning your kid's cries, you're learning the kid's needs. So at first, you might be checking on them more than you might need to if you were more experienced. But that's nothing to be ashamed of. That's you learning. But even that, you're not checking in with frantic energy and fearful, like, what's going on? You're checking. You're just checking on them. And the less that you're freaking out, the less they freak out. The more you're calm, the more they're calm. And so you actually train your kids, even from the get-go, really by your demeanor. Even into toddler age, we've talked about this before too, but your kid falls down and you freak out going, oh no. That's when they usually cry, or they start to go, I should be freaking out right now because I fell and my mom or my dad is freaking out. There must be something wrong. And they learn to freak out. Whereas if you kind of commend it and go, oh man, you fell. That's all right. You're good. They may cry still. They may still, because there's pain, but they're going to calm down a lot quicker. And sometimes they even learn there was really not much pain to that. So I don't even need to cry. I just need to kind of shake it off. You can train young kids before they even can talk by how you live, by how you respond, how you interact with them from the get-go. Isaiah 46:3 says this, "Listen to me, you descendants of Jacob, all the remnant of the people of Israel, you whom I have upheld since your birth and have carried you since you were born." God does this for us. We need to be prepared to do it for our own kids. We are not raising kids so that they become little vessels for us to enjoy and to make our life easier. In one sense, when you're having a kid, especially a young one, before they're even trained, they're going to be a ton of work. You got to kind of prepare your mind for action, as he talks about in First Peter. Prepare your mind for action. You're going to have to carry that kid. You're going to, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally. I mean, every aspect of your life is going to be devoted to carrying this kid in so many ways. But oftentimes we kind of figure, babies are almost like living dolls and living little friends that are going to grow up, and people get frustrated when it's like, they're not always cute. Most of the time they're not cute. Babies can be cute when you wash them, clean them, dress them, and they're cute for that like 5 seconds before they spit up again, or before they mess their diaper again, and before they're cute for these little snippets of time. But a lot of times they're a lot of work. They're a lot of sacrifice for you, and a lot of parents go into it kind of imagining it's going to be this idyllic TV show, picturesque, Instagram life where like you can just take pictures and show yourself, oh, it's all so sweet. You got to prepare yourself to carry them along in every aspect of their life until they kind of can stand on their 2 feet as they get older. And we're not talking about just literally being able to stand or walk, but literally be able to make decisions, be able to self-control, to follow the Lord, to do those things. You'll be carrying them for the next, let's say 18 to 20 some years of their life, less and less as they go, and less as they grow up. But if we're just expecting a quick transition in that, you're going to be frustrated on a day-to-day basis rather than just going, this is my lot. I had kids, as they say, I didn't ask to be born. Parents who do the crime got to be ready to do the time. So we should be prepared. It takes a lot. Now, it's a blessing. It's a joy. It's all kinds of awesome within that. But only if you have the attitude of godliness and self-sacrifice. If you go into it thinking they're going to make your life better and they're going to make you feel this way and and it's all on them, you're going to constantly be frustrated because you're going to find out that's not their mindset. That's not where they're at. They don't know enough, especially the young ones. They don't know anything. They're just going to be attending to what they want. They have no self-control. They have no decision-making. They have no wisdom. You got to carry them along. You got to be patient. So in Isaiah 57, verse 14, it says, it'll be said, build it up, prepare the way, take every obstacle out of the way of my people. One of the things we want to do as parents is make our kids' life as easy as possible to follow the Lord. Now, make this clear, not as easy as possible just in life. If you remove every little life thing, you actually are kind of like taking the butterfly out of the cocoon. They're gonna die. They're not gonna be good. They're not gonna have perseverance. They're not gonna have resilience. You try to resolve every trial and hardship in their life by being a hovering parent, a helicopter mom or an overprotective father kind of idea. That's not what this kind of idea of preparing the way, remove every obstacle. This is the idea of removing every obstacle that would cause them to stumble in knowing Christ, in coming to know Christ. We want to be doing things that make it as easy as possible for them to follow Christ, to know Christ. That doesn't mean removing every trial or hardship or difficulty with a friend or a teacher or, doing everything that just makes the kid happy. That is not the idea of removing every obstacle. In many ways, it's really us as parents. We have to remove ourselves as an obstacle. We got to make sure we're not a stumbling block. Luke 17, verse 2, it says, it would be better for him to have a millstone hung around his neck and to be thrown into the sea than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. Watch yourselves, right? We want to watch ourselves. We don't want to cause a little one to stumble by our own hypocrisy, by frustrating them, as he talks about. Fathers, train your children, but don't embitter them. Don't frustrate them. Don't cause them to be angry with those things. Well, we've talked about in other videos, the hypocrisy, things like that, but also just our own laziness or expecting way too much out of them, being hypocritical in our approach to their emotions. We expect them to have perfect hold of their emotions while we ourselves, who have many years on them, don't. It's not really fair to expect like a little kid not to cry or a little kid not to freak out over dumb little things. We need to be the ones who are calm, not freaking out that they're freaking out. But a lot of times parents kind of do. They get angry. They're like, oh, stop it. We got to be careful. And when we mess up and we do those, you got to go back and say, hey, I was wrong to respond to you that way. Yeah, you were wrong. You over dramatized that. You overreacted. Sure. But boy, I was the bigger mess because I should have been more grown up. I should have been the grown up in this situation, not overreacting. So when we remove ourselves of the obstacle, you make it as easy as possible for them to do what's right. Not for them to have pleasure, not for them to have no hardships, but to do what's right. Which means often you're instructing them, often you're talking to them, you're teaching them all kinds of things. But even these little kids, let's say to a baby, they're not doing what's right, they're not choosing what's right. But if you're not careful and you exhaust your kid because you want to keep a high schedule, you want to be moving all the time, you want to be going, and you don't understand that your kid needs more sleep than you do at that point, especially babies, and then you're wondering why they're always fussy, why they're always crying, why they're always... Sometimes little babies, they act better and do better when they have naps, when they just get rest. It doesn't mean you have to run home, but there's times you have to find a way to give them naps and to find quiet spots. Obviously, a messy diaper, babies don't do well with messy diapers, and you can sit there and go, well, they need to calm down. It's like, yeah, but remove the obstacle. Why make it harder for a baby to be pleasant by leaving them in a dirty diaper and then expecting them not to cry, not to whine? We need to be very mindful of, am I doing everything I can for them to do what's right? Now, again, you look at a baby, it's like, oh, it's not right. I mean, it's just babies crying and whining. But you're training yourself in this process. You are wanting to understand that I don't want to make it harder for my kid to obey, to be good, to think of others, to be pleasant, to have a good attitude. So whatever I can remove, whether it's that dirty diaper, whether it's giving them a nap, whether it's just understanding what your kid's abilities are or inabilities. There's some kids who are very social and they love being around people and they will do well around people. There's other kids who aren't as social, and you recognize that they start kind of... It's not to say, well, this is them for life, and you could train them, you could teach them, you press them in putting them in the situation to a certain point, but you watch them and you recognize, oh, they're losing it. They need a break. They need not to be passed around by everyone at church and things like that. You know what? They just need to be in my arms right now. Doesn't mean you don't let them go to others because it distresses them a little bit. Kids sometimes need to be a little distressed, not always being in the comfort of mommy's arms. But there is that level where it's like, yeah, but now I'm putting a stumbling block in their way because now they've reached their capacity. They can't hold it together anymore. And it's like, you know what? Time to just hold them or put them in the carriage and set them aside and into a quiet area, and you walk over with them and you stay there too. And there's different things you can do. Maybe it's time to go home. But your kids start to learn. Every kid has struggles, but a lot of parents overcompensate. My kid doesn't like to last all through church, so they start skipping church or even Sunday school and those kind of things, rather than training your baby. No, you can make it. You're just gonna nap, and I'm gonna be calm when you start fussing. I'm not gonna freak out, but I'll maybe take you out of the classroom and calm you down. But then we're going back in. Your kid will learn. Your kid will get used to those things. But again, some kids will adjust quicker. Some kids need more attendance. Some kids need a little more of a break. And you have to kind of slowly warm them up to those kind of things, even to other family members and things like that. So we got to be aware, because little babies, they want what they want and they get what they want, often through whining and crying. They don't really know enough to make decisions, but they can still be trained. They can still be taught. And your kid is either training you or you're training your kid. When our firstborn, being new parents, our firstborn was born, and boy, she trained us in a lot of things. Bedtime became a routine of her making. Sure, we set the time, so we were the parents and we were in charge. But boy, the routine we had to go through to get her into bed, because she had to have everything just so, every doll in place, no shadows in wrong places, and had to go through certain routines and I mean, she was really uptight as a baby, and we didn't even recognize it because you get into survival mode and you just kind of, I gotta get through this. I just gotta. But even as a baby, she was training us rather than us training her. And we were even trying to train her. We were even trying to teach her and let her fuss to a certain extent and let her, grow up and self-soothe and things like that. We were trying even as babies, but our mother-in-law pointed out, this routine's kind of crazy when she had to babysit her once, and we were like, what? It's not correct. And then it was like, wait, is it? And we started looking like, man, this kid has put us through like a ton of steps just to get her to go to sleep, to calm down. We had to recognize we need to train her, not her train us, but that means we have to train ourselves. Then, yeah, there'll be some fussing. Yeah, it's not quite as easy. Yeah, there's going to be some battles with her and, telling her to be quiet and going in again and going, no, be quiet, and not soothing her, not comforting her, making everything right. It's like, no, you need to calm down and you need to go to sleep whether you like it or not. We had to retrain her by retraining ourselves. And that's something where you may have to come to discipline in certain things as the kids get older, but oftentimes it's more self-discipline to out-stubborn your kid, and not to be a jerk about it, not to be, I'm tougher than you, just a matter of, I can't allow you to rule this home. Now, one of the things about little kids, I like the statement of don't house-proof or child-proof your house-proof your kid, right? You got to train them. You got to teach them. Again, firstborns, parents, really. This is stories of new parents as much as my poor firstborn, right? With firstborns, you're a new parent and you're trying to figure things out. My firstborn's first word was no. And one of the things we were teaching her from the get-go, even though she was training us in different areas, I mean, I'm not trying to boast like we were great. We had all kinds of problems with our own insight and ability. But one of the things that I really understood at some point is you can't make the house safe for a kid completely. Now, we took the certain precautions. You make sure certain cabinets with chemicals. You don't want to make that mistake going, oh, well, she should have known. It's like, okay, putting the plugs in the outlets, things like that, where there's certain precautions that's like, that's life or death risks, may not be worth it. But there are certain things that we were not going to remove from the house that a lot of houses do because they go, well, they'll break it. It's like, what? It's better to teach the kid the limitations and boundaries and respect and, all property and obedience by leaving some of those things. Now, again, remove every hindrance in one sense from them making the right choice. But there is also that place where you can't remove every little thing that tempts them, because they will always find something that tempts them, whether it's a stairway, whether it's an ornament, whether it's a cup on a table. You're not going to be able to remove everything. So you've got to train them. Again, put the little barrier on the stairs at the top so they don't fall down. Take the life risk precautions, but there's some things where it's like, they might break that, they may do wrong, but you got to train them to say no. And you teach them, no, don't touch that, no. And our youngest she loved to push it. She would find things and she'd want to touch it, and we'd watch her and we'd go, no. And she'd, no. And it's like, ooh. And she would just go right back to it, like, I'm going to touch it. It's like, no. And you're grabbing her hand and disciplining. It's like, no. And, it's like, no. And we had to be more stubborn, because a lot of parents will take it and go, well, we're just putting it away. When it's like, no, she's a toddler enough that she knows, what she's doing to some. She doesn't know what's right or wrong, but she knows the word no, and she knows she should stop. And our first Christmas with her, she was coming up to the tree, and Sarah showed her all the decorations, and Sarah was like, look at the pretty. She's like, ooh, And then we just said, but no touching. No touching. And she knew no well enough, even as a young kid, where all she really knew to say is no. So she would crawl up to the tree, kind of stand up, and then look at the ornaments, point at them, go, no, no, because she wanted to touch them. She was learning. And this is a little kid who doesn't even know how to talk, doesn't know how to walk, just barely knows how to stand and barely knows how to crawl, really. But these are things that you start right away in, and not because they're going to figure it out and they're going to turn and they're going to do everything right, but you're training yourself and you're making the choices of battles. There's some things, again, risking their life, not worth the battle at that point. Teaching them to say no to an outlet and then hoping they do it. It's like, yeah, put the plug in, right? But touching something on a table, well, I don't want the inconvenience of the spill or the breakings. Like, that's worth the battle so that they learn. So we have to make wise choices, and that'll be different in different homes, different situations, different needs, but we have to be aware that we're training ourselves as we train them. So in speaking of that training them, it's Proverbs 22 verse 6, where it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. When you train up a child, one of the things we've first got to understand, like you're carrying your kid along, is you start to make that effort to train them, to teach them, to speak to them in a calm, a respectful, loving manner, even when they're babies, even when they're young, to where they may not understand a thing you're saying, but in trying to train them when they're so young, and again, we're not talking like heavy training and you're going to be a soldier. We're just talking about the atmosphere of the house, the rules of the house and things like that. They may not understand it, but when you're expressing that to them in a hopefully calm manner, but hopefully even if you're not calm all the time, that you're training yourself. Because as you train your child when they're young, you are training yourself to continue to train them when they get older, when it really starts to take effect, when it really starts to matter. We tend to wait to start training our kids when we think they can fully understand, when we think they can fully get it. And by that time, usually we judge that too late, because kids they pick up on a ton of stuff. I mean, how do they even learn to walk? I mean, do we really sit there and move their legs and go, okay, do this, do that, and we explain it to them? There's a body mechanics to it. Well, they've watched. And if you've ever had multiple kids, the kids who come after your first kid often learn faster because they follow their siblings around. And so they're like, man, look at them move. And then they start kind of going, oh, maybe I can move. Well, they're not sitting there making a cognitive decision going, you know what, they're moving their legs. I'm going to try bending my knee and then put my toe. It comes somewhat naturally, but from watching. So you are explaining things to kids that they may not understand the words, but they understand the tone. They start to understand the idea of it. They get it when they're watching you. But you're training yourself so that as it goes along, you're already in the habit of teaching them, explaining things, of bringing them along. But you're doing it not in they need to understand now, they got it. It's with this patient mindset of, this will pay off as it goes because I'm training myself as I train them, because you train up a child in the way they should go when? From the get-go. I mean, really from the get-go, you're starting to train them by conducting yourself the right way towards them, but also talking to them even as if they could understand. He's like, you need to calm down. I mean, even little newborns can sense when you kind of go, no, you're okay. You're okay. If you go, oh, geez, they're just crying. No, they're just crying. And they start. But when you're talking to them and trying to train them, you're training yourself to respond to them in certain ways. And as they get older and you get older, you start to continue to train them up. So again, you're carrying them along. But we'll get into more of the details of the training in a little bit here. But just keep in mind, even from the get-go, you are seeking to train your kids if for only one reason, of training yourself to train your kids as they get older. Okay, that's the end of part 1. That's where we're going to split it, and we'll start part 2. So stay tuned for that release. It should be coming anytime as soon as it's done being edited. So, all right, God bless you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.